Hello, welcome to the Brazilian Health Nut Show. Here you will find cutting edge information provided by the best experts in the world so you can learn how to burn fat for the rest of your life. Bruno de Gama is the Brazilian health nut in a mission to solve the problems you have when trying to lose weight forever. He is a nutritional therapy practitioner, a certified personal trainer, and a holistic lifestyle coach by the Czech Institute. Don't forget to say hello and sign up to our free newsletter at www.brazilianhealthnut.com. Let's go.
Okay, thank you so much for being here with me today, Charles. I super appreciate your time. Can you tell a little bit about your background? Who is Charles Eugster? And also Vice.com consider you to be like the healthiest old person alive. I put this old under quotation because I don't like this word.
I like it. I like it. I am not anti-aging. I am pro-aging.
Awesome.
Now I don't know exactly how to answer your question. Background: I was born in England. I went to school there, and well, we did quite a lot of sports. I was in the first 8 rowing, and I was in the second string boxing, and second 15 rugby.
Cool. And you also were a dentist, right? If I'm not mistaken, I was reading some articles about you today.
Yes, that is important. I was a dentist, and one of the places that I studied was in the United States, and that was at Northwestern University in Chicago.
Wow. Okay. Nice.
After I worked until I was 75, and then after, well, actually I started before, but I published a newsletter on clinical dentistry until I was 82, which I unfortunately disposed of. One of the reasons being that my wife had just died, and the second reason was that I thought that I would not live until I was 85. But what happened was that I had discovered that there was a rowing category for 63. For 60 when I was 63, and I and another partner we started rowing together. Right. And then in 1997, he dropped out, and I went on rowing internationally, and I was rowing for 17 years, almost every year in the World Masters rowing regattas in various parts of the world, including, by the way, Princeton, USA.
I'm close to Princeton here. I'm in New York City right now, so we are close. Awesome. That's a nice story. I have so many questions for you, Charles. It's crazy. Usually I have a little script, but today I ask all my social media, everybody was excited to send me questions. So let's try. Hope we can cover most of them. But the first one that I have for you here is actually when I was watching your TED Talk today. And really caught my attention when you said like the 3 things to have a successful aging.
Yep.
And you said work, diet, and exercise. But you said in this order. So that means work first, right? So can you expand a little bit?
Right, absolutely right. I was from the age of 82, I was unemployed for 8 years, and I found that terrible. And at the age of 90, I was able to get a job in a fitness group in Germany. And because I was so expensive, they fired me when I was 92. And since 92, I'm trying to become an author. Now, the most important thing is, in my opinion, for healthy life is work. Now, you can take an example of the Queen of England, who obviously does not go jogging in her park at
Right.
6 o'clock in the morning, but she has a job. And the other interesting thing is the thing that probably keeps her fit is that she has so many engagements, and all the engagements involve standing. That
Mm.
is, it's in actual fact, we know today that, for example, research from Northwestern University to show that sitting is really bad for you for long periods. But the most important thing about work is that you not only use your brain, but commuting, for example, is something that requires a considerable amount of energy. There's a considerable amount of energy is expended during occupation. That's, in my opinion, having a job is one of the most important things. In my personal opinion, the reason why so many people have chronic diseases because they retire.
Mm.
And you mustn't forget that chronic diseases are what they call preventable diseases. They are not, shall we say, a definite part of old life. It's entirely dependent upon the particular lifestyle.
Right. What about this? A lot of people, especially here in the United States, I hear all the time they are very unhappy with their work. A lot of people are still working, but they don't have any pleasure around. How do you see like this kind of like a purpose also around your work, right?
Okay, well, uh, the answer is to retrain, to start something else. I mean, the interesting fact is that from the age of 55 to 65 is the time when of the entrepreneurs. There are more new companies founded by this, but in this particular decade than any other, which is rather extraordinary because most people seem to think that startups involve just younger people, but that is not the case. If you're
Right.
not happy with your job, retrain and do something else. I mean,
There we go.
that's the answer. But you mustn't forget that retraining continuously. You have to continually learn new things because everything is continually changing, and therefore, learning new things is one of the most important. Well, shall we say, one of my main messages is that you can rebuild your body at any age. You can learn something new at any age, and you can start a new life at any age.
Right. And that's actually my next question for you here because I was going to ask you this. Are you living like this way like forever, or this is like you from what I hear right now, you kind of like reinventing yourself with the years. It's not like, oh, you've been doing the same thing since you were born, right?
Oh no, no. I mean, look, I've just whew, there there are two things that I'd like to say. The first thing is that I started. I was a rower, as I mentioned, but I started running when I was 95 for the first time in my life. I mean, at school I was a very slow runner, and running was completely new. And in that particular period, that's what is it about 18, 19 months.
Mm-hmm.
I've managed to get three British records and two world records. Now, this is just to demonstrate that you can learn something new at any age. And what I am doing now is that I am trying to find out all the information that I can possibly can upon aging. I'm a member of the Royal Society of Medicine in London, and they have magnificent research availabilities, so that they send me about 40 to 50 resumes of articles from all over the world about every 3 months, and I sift through those and try to get the most modern information that I can possibly have. But the thing that really shocks me is the fact that from the age of about 70, there is very, very, very little. And I'm in my age group, I should say 70 to 90 or 70 to 100, we are ignored by research. It is extremely difficult to get a job. And the other thing is that it's extremely difficult to get a girlfriend. Why? Because the dating agencies only provide girls up to 70.
Right. I remember when I was reading your article today, that was one of your complaints that they just go up to 70.
Thanks.
That's funny. That's funny. And Charles, one of the biggest, like the questions that I got the most today when I was reaching out to my social media was like, oh, ask him what does he keeps him motivated? Like, what's his biggest drive? You know?
Well, at the moment, my biggest drive is my book. I want to publish a book. I want to change the world. One of the most dreadful things that we are doing is, of course, retiring. I mean, it's the most. It's. I have to be very careful what I say, but I think it's one of the stupidest things that have ever been suggested. There are all sorts of reasons for this. You must not forget that we are still hunter-gatherers. Our bodies are still that of a hunter-gatherer. And the important thing to realize is that as a hunter-gatherer, the physical movements that you did were extremely varied. I mean, you were digging, you were running, you were climbing, you were carrying weights, and so on and so on and so forth. And you were looking for food continuously. As a hunter-gatherer, you never retired. I mean, this idea of retirement was something to deal with the fact that people were getting so old. But it has been an absolute catastrophe because from about the age of retirement, most people suffer from chronic disease. I read a research, 92.2% of people over 65 have one or more chronic diseases. Now, what does that mean? That means that you can't cure these diseases. You can just, as we say, do something about their symptoms. But the enormous amount of these chronic diseases is absolutely incredible. It amounts to 78% of the medical costs. You know as well as I do that the medical costs are skyrocketing, and they're going to go on skyrocketing because people are still retiring and they are still living longer in spite of the fact that they have chronic diseases. And the other thing is of course, coupled with retirement, is this pension disaster. I mean, all you've got to do is to look at what happened in Detroit. 50% of the town's debt was due to pension liabilities. Look at the pension liabilities of the beautiful city of Chicago. It's absolutely unbelievable. And unless we really do something about it, that we improve our health in old age, my grandchildren will live in poverty.
Yeah, that's a big drive. Thank you so much for doing this work. And Charles, so how do you handle, like, you're very different from most 90 years old people. Like, how do you handle this, your friends, like being around people who are not on the same page as you are, not just health, but also a lot of people are retired by that age, right? Or, so how do you handle this, your friendships nowadays?
Well, it's it's relatively easy because I have very very few friends that are retired.
Mhm.
Most of my friends are younger people.
Right. It doesn't have to be the same age, right?
Uh,
I agree.
now,
I agree.
Now, look, they are very, very. You are very right. There are very, very few people of my age that are healthy. That's an enormous. It's an enormous problem, and of
Mhm.
course we haven't mentioned this, but of course diet is another. Let's just say nutrition is something extremely important.
Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit later about your diet, but before that, I have a selfish question here. It's for me this one. Uh, I have something, like one of my goals, my vision in life is to live at least to 100 years old. I don't know how, we never know those things, but I write it down every day on my schedule. I have an agenda here, and I write it down every morning, like how many days I've been here on this planet and how many days are left to my 100 years anniversary. So today I write it down. It's 10,875 days since I was born and 25,650 days to my 100th birthday, right? So my question for you is, how do you compare like your feeling, not just physically, but also like mentally and spiritual from when I'm on my 20s right now and you are on your 90s? Like, how do you compare this journey from 20 to 30, 40s, until 90s?
Well, of course, we we change, and of course, we also adapt to our environment. That is to say, the environment that I had when I was in my 20s and 30s is completely different to anything that is comparable to today's environment. So we continuously change and we adapt to the new changes. One of the huge changes that is coming towards us is, of course, the digital revolution. And we will have to adapt to that to find something new how to combat that. But the longer I live, the more that I feel that um, it is very, very conceited for human beings to call themselves Homo sapiens. Now, we have done so many stupid things and are continually doing stupid things, such as so we say we are destroying our environment, we are destroying our planet, we are destroying other living creatures. Now, in my opinion, no sane animal would do anything like that, and we are always experimenting, doing different things. And when that happens, then we have unexpected consequences, which can be quite serious.
Right.
Now, this is one of the things that happened about 10,000 years ago when we became farmers. Humans decided that living the life of a hunter gatherer was just too tough, and so he started domesticating animals and he started growing his own food. And that meant that he had a staple diet, which means that he no longer had the huge variety of food that he had before. And the other most devastating thing that happened was that he contacted infectious diseases from the animals that he husbanded, you see, and the result of that was a drop of life expectancy of 20 years. The hunter gatherers lived to the age of about 40 or had a life expectancy of 40. After farming, the life expectancy dropped to 20, and also they had a considerable loss in height. And after 10 years of research and so forth, we have managed to combat most of the infectious diseases. And the other thing is that, of course, we have a diet that can be more varied. And also, we have increased in height to the same height as we were when we were hunter-gatherers. Apparently, the increase in height has stopped in 1970. But we are now, shall we say, somewhere near where we were 10,000 years ago after making this extraordinary, shall we say, experiment. That's what it amounted to, and we are continually experimenting.
Hey, what's up, guys? Bruno Gama here, Brazilian Health Nut, and let's take a little break from the show because I want to offer you something very, very special, okay? So if you go to BrazilianHealthNut.com and scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, you find a place that you can claim your free strategy call with me. Or you can just send me an email at bruno@BrazilianHealthNut.com and tell me that you want to schedule your free call, okay? During this call, we are going to develop a strategy that works for your kind of body and lifestyle, because remember that we all different. So go ahead and do that now because spots are limited, okay? So now let's get back to the show. Right. Yeah, I want to get into the diet in few questions, but before that, how do you face the topic of death in your life?
Well, death is how shall I put it, something that occurs to all living creatures. It's something perfectly natural. It is something that, how shall I put it, death is something that can be completely unexpected, or in cases of disease, some diseases, people are told that they can only live for a certain length of time. But death is, should we put it this way, is a part of living.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And another question that I got a lot, Charles, was, ask Charles, how does his day look like? How is his routine? Like from the time when he wakes up, until like lunch, and then afternoon to the time when he goes to bed. Give us like an example, like a normal day in your life.
Well, that is, how shall I put it, extremely varied. Extremely varied. Now, one of the things, as I don't have, shall we say, a job as shall we say, something
a nine to five.
I don't have a nine to five job as a writer. As a writer, you just sort of write when you feel like it and so forth. So I live outside Zurich, and in Zurich I have a very small room that is my office, so that where I have most of my mail and everything sent, so that I have to get up and go to the office. It's something that I really don't need, but it gives me part of the, how shall I put it, of the benefits of having a 9 to 5 job. That I've got to get onto my little train. I've got to change into another train, and then from that train, I've got to get into a tram and so forth. And of course, all this needs a certain amount of physical energy expenditure, which I would not have if I were to sit around all day and do very little. The unfortunate thing about retirement is that one says that the idea is to spend more time with one's family. Now, the question is, has your family really deserved this?
Mm.
Now,
Interesting.
as far as my day is concerned, I get up in the morning and I make my own breakfast, and then perhaps I go to the office, and perhaps I don't. And if in the office, I have a very, very small lunch, and then I do some work on the computer, and then I come back. And of course, other days I have my training days at the moment, because I tore my hamstring muscle. What we are doing now is that we are trying to develop my upper body, and so we have a very severe training schedule that lasts about perhaps 2.5 hours. And after that, of course, one needs a recovery period. This is extremely, extremely important. We're getting into, how shall I put it, the exercise now, but exercise is of course something that takes a lot of time, because my coach has a gym in a place that is quite some distance from where I am, and so if I have a training day, it practically fills up the whole day for me. So that my days are, how shall I put it, extremely, extremely varied. I mean, that's the nice thing, that there's always something different to look forward to, something different going on.
Mm-hmm. You don't have a schedule per se. You're like living your life by design.
No.
That's awesome. Cool. So when you close your TED talk, Charles, you close with this phrase, like the girl's doing like some comments, and then you said, "If Adam refused the fruit and instead eat the steak, the world would be different." let's talk about your diet now. Let's get into this part of the interview here that I love a lot. Talking about nutrition and all that kind of stuff. So tell us a bit about your own diet.
Well, actually, nutrition is something that should be combined with exercise. According to the exercise that you do, your nutrition should be adapted to it. That is to say, according to the type of person you are. For example, if you are a power person, then you would need more protein. However, if you are a endurance person, for example, that is somebody would have a lot of slow twitch fibers in his muscles. If you are an endurance person, you would probably need more carbohydrates, although at the moment this may be slightly questioned. But nevertheless, diet is something that should be coupled with first of all, your genetic type, and secondly, the type of exercise that you do. Now, at the present time, I am into sprinting. I like taking part in competitions involving short distances. You see, it seems to have been one of the things that disturbs me is that people talk about diets. That's to say that eating the same things. this is something that we should never do because, as I said, we are hunter-gatherers. And as a hunter-gatherers, you had a huge different variety of food. So it is very, very important to have a huge variety. The other thing to remember is that your digestion is carried out mainly by bacteria in your gut. And the number of bacteria in your gut is greater than the number of cells that you have in your body. So, because that is the case, different people have different types of bacteria in their gut. So that food that is, shall we say, beneficial for me may not be beneficial for somebody else. It all depends upon your, as I said, your genetic type and the type of bacteria that you happen to have in your gut. But
Yes, that's so true. Like I work with people, and I can tell you, every person is very different. Every person has their own genetics, like you just said, and every person has their own lifestyle. Some people are, like you said, they are practicing a lot of sports, doing more powerlifting. Other people, no, they're just walking. So we have to see the individual as a whole. Like cannot just say like, oh, do this, so everybody's gonna work. So has your diet changed throughout the years? Like when you let's say when you're on your 20s compared to now, like
yes,
how does it?
and enormously, of course.
Yeah.
In my 20s and so forth, the how shall I put it? When I was a young man, for example, we only had citrus fruits just about once a year. For example, I mean that is just one example. Our diet would change according to the time of the year. At that particular time, you didn't have the type of fruit that you can buy today all year round, and so forth. That you have to adapt to the particular type of food that was available. But what I have been doing is, of course, continually trying to experiment with myself. And I was, of course, caught up with this idea that fats and things are bad for you. And so I tried to cut out dairy foods, but the result was that I think that was one of the reasons why I suffered severe cramps in my legs, probably due to a lack of calcium. And but you see, one of the most important things to remember is that as you get older, you suffer from sarcopenia. That is to say that you lose muscle mass and muscle strength. And at a rate of it starts at about, shall we say, at about 40 to 50, and at a rate, there are a lot of estimates from about 0.5% to 1% or even more per year, so that when you're about 85, you probably have lost about 50% of your muscle mass, which may or may not have been replaced by fat. And so, obviously, in old age, one of the most important things to do is to get rid of the fat and to rebuild your muscle. Now, you can only rebuild your muscle with additional protein, because in old age, the protein synthesis is reduced. So what I do is that I take these sort of shakes, bodybuilder shakes, and they mainly contain whey protein. And the other important thing is that there's a amino acid called leucine, and that is one of the most important amino acids to build muscle. And
Yeah.
the difficulty, of course, is the fact that in order to build muscle, you have to train your muscles to exhaustion. And that is, of course, something very, very difficult to do. There are research of trying to find different ways around this. There's a sort of
Like resistance training, right? That's the best way we can do this nowadays is with lifting weights, either at the gym or your own body. I wanna ask you a little bit about your exercise routine, but before that, you remind me to ask you about this. Do you have any like supplementations, like supplements that you take besides whey protein?
Um, oh yes. First of all, the interesting thing was that when I was a rower, I was of course always outdoors. But when I started rebuilding my body, I trained in a gym, and that simply meant that I had a vitamin D deficiency, which is extremely common amongst older people because simply that they don't get out in
Right.
the fresh air in the sunlight often enough. And so, for example, I have to take vitamin D. The other thing that I take is vitamin E because there is some suggestion that vitamin E helps with muscle building, and then of course omega 3. Those
Okay.
are the three things. Now, for a certain part of the training, I may take um, carnitine. That's something that is supposed to give you more power, but with a lot of other amino acids, some of them work beautifully with some people, but not at all with others. And one of the huge problems that we have as far as building muscle is concerned is that it depends upon genetics. It seems that there are some people that are what they call non responders. That is to say, that they can go into a gym and they can lift all the weights they want, but nothing happens. And that, unfortunately, is about, according to Professor Timmons, is about almost 20%. So it is extremely difficult for some people to build muscle in old age. On the other hand, you can say that most of us, that's to say about 80% of us, are still capable of building muscle in old age. The other interesting thing is that we can change the type of muscle fibers, you see, because you have different types of muscle fibers, and some of them are fast twitch and the others are slow twitch, according to, shall we say, whether you do a type of endurance or whether you do a type of power
Mm-hmm.
exercise, you see.
Right. So before I ask you some more questions about exercise, I have one more question regarding your diet. What are the things that you try to avoid the most when you're looking into what you're eating, and what are the things that you try to have the most?
What I definitely avoid anything that has been sweetened. I also try to avoid things that have been manufactured. Shall we say, um,
Most of the things nowadays.
the problem is that a lot of the things are manufactured. With other words, I like to concentrate on fresh foods as much as possible. But due to the fact that I want to build muscle, obviously I try to aim for a protein-rich diet. Now, the thing is that if you have a protein-rich diet, your body may become too acidic. And the interesting thing is that one of the ways to prevent that is to eat fats. Now, at the moment, I am on a sort of fatty diet. And
Mhm.
it's interesting for me because when I go into a grocery store, it's very difficult to find things that are really fat because it's all sort of skimmed milk, semi-fat, half fat. Most foods seem to have the fat removed, but I like things like fatty bacon or butter, cream, and to my surprise, this seems to be something like the Atkins diet, but it's something that, how shall I put it, I've stumbled upon in my research that if you do consume a large amount of protein, you have to test your urine on a regular basis to see whether you are too acidic or not. And then, of course, if you are too acidic, you can also take some sort of base minerals. You can get this in a pharmacy, but it's definitely something that should be washed. And the other thing is, of course, as I noted before, an enormous amount of variety in your food.
Right. Yes, I talk about this all the time about kind of like rotating a diet. For example, today in the morning, I had some eggs with bacon, coconut oil, and butter. So very fat and very rich in protein as well. And sometimes I just fast. Sometimes I eat some nuts and seeds. I'm always like trying to change my diet on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, pretty much. And I never eat the same things over and over again. I think that's super important because nowadays people are just getting the same kinds of food and very short amount of food, like species, right? Like 10 species the most. There was some research talking about a while back in the days, people would have more than 80 kinds of species into their life, right? So that's a huge difference. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's get into a little bit about your exercise routine. So you told me that you're doing some resistance training and you're also doing some sprinting. And I think that's awesome. Like not many people are doing sprinting. That's something that I bring to a lot of people doing some high intense interval training with sprint. So can you tell us a little bit more what you're doing in terms of exercise?
Well, as far as sprinting is concerned, it's rather, for me, interesting because I read a report that high intensity interval training is beneficial for your heart. Now, one of the things that we have to recognize is that due to the fact that our bodies are designed for so many different types of movements, if you shall we say take up a certain sport, you will do the same movements over and over and over again, and that is something that your body is not designed for. And the result is, of course, injuries.
Right. Chronic. When you're doing just something chronic, you end up having some problems, right?
Well, it's just doing the same thing. I'll give you an example. In Sochi, in Russia, at the Olympic Games, an extraordinary amount of athletes had injuries. 12% had injuries, and 8% had infections. And the reason that these people get infections is that after a strong training period, your resistance is reduced for a certain period of time. It can last perhaps an hour or two, but immediately after training, you should avoid, of course, contact with anybody that has a cold, for example. because the danger is that you will get the cold. The exercise in itself does increase your resistance to infections. If on infections, the point is this: that as you get older, your resistance is reduced, and it simply means that when you have a cold, it lasts longer. I can remember in my late 80s when I had a cold, it would last for 3 weeks. But something extraordinary happened. Now, there's no real explanation for this, but from the age of 80, I am now approaching 97. I have only had in that period 2 colds, where
Wow.
previously I would have a cold every year. Now, we don't know whether something happens to your body at the age of 90, or whether it simply was perhaps because at that point, at about 89, my body was completely rebuilt. So we don't really know the situation. But as far as training in older people is concerned, um, uh, the most important thing is, of course, muscle building.
Right. Like we talked about before about your strength training to
Yes,
keep it up, the muscles, right?
that's right. And
Nice.
but I must tell you this: as I said, I did an enormous amount of rowing, and perhaps I was rowing almost every year in a competition for about 30 years. Now that is, of course, something that my body was not designed for, and as a result, I developed some slight heart arrhythmias and back problems. Now, we got rid of the back problems with training, but my heart arrhythmias have been almost eliminated due to sprinting. And that is nothing else as high intensity interval training, which I am convinced is ideal for people of older age, especially, of course, if they have the genetic type of being a power person. You see, your genetics determined what type of muscle fibers that you have.
Right.
One of the reasons that I started sprinting was the fact that when you look at sprinters, you see that the people that sprint for short distances have muscle. So we say Mr. Bolt, for example, has muscle. But when you look at the, shall we say, marathon people that run marathons, they're just matchstick men. They they have no muscle whatsoever, and therefore, in older age, in my personal opinion, running a marathon is not something advisable because the distance is so long that you not only um, burn all your fat, but you also burn muscle mass, which
Yes.
is something that, of course, for an older person is certainly not advisable. I would like to recommend people over 50 not to take part in a marathon, but there seems to be sort of some.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, you want to keep our muscles up. That's what's up, guys. So, Charles, besides work, besides not retiring, that's super important. Never ever, right? Besides your diet that you talk about and exercise, what else do you think it is important to have like a healthy, long life?
If you can still work, if you can work, learn new things, if you have a healthy diet, and if you do sufficient exercise. Now, by the way, I mean, the amount that of exercise that one should do in older age is awesome. I mean, it's you have to do an enormous amount, and the unfortunate thing is that we the health people talk about inactivity. It's from the age of about 65, 70 onwards that inactivity is the most prevalent, but yet nothing is done about it. And as I said before, we are a neglected part of the population. There are about 2 million people 90 plus in the USA, and there are about 500,000 in England, in the United Kingdom. And we know nothing about these people. When I go to a doctor, he hasn't got a clue what my maximum heart rate should be. He hasn't got a clue what my testosterone production should be. The medical profession knows nothing about us. Nobody knows anything about us. And I want to change all that, and I want to change the fact that unless we do something, we are heading for this financial and social disaster, because our health systems cannot cope in the future.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yes, that's so true. A couple of last questions here for you, Charles. How do you handle the topic of stress, and do you use any meditation, like visualization, in your life?
Stress. I am of the opinion that stress is an important part of living. We need stress. One of the huge advantages of a sport, I've talked about the disadvantages, which of course is the prevalence of injuries. The advantage of sport is that, first of all, that you will train more if you are preparing for a competition than if you are not. And the other thing is that you get your adrenaline rush.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a hunter-gatherer, we were continually subject to adrenaline rushes. We were either hunting or we were hunted. And today, of course, one tries to get an adrenaline rush watching a football match, for example. Everybody gets all keyed up. But the most important, the best adrenaline rush that you get, which is far better than that watching a football match, is taking part in a competition, trying to win. That is something that is extremely beneficial. So we have, as far as sport is concerned, we have the disadvantage of injuries. That can be often mitigated by cross-training. That is to say that you do more than one particular sport. The other side of it is that the enormous benefits that you get from your adrenaline rushes and your fact that you train more.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you so much. So, if you could go back in time, Charles, like let's say when you were in your 20s, what would you say to Charles when he was 20 right now?
I would say, Charles, try to focus on something different than just women.
That was all you thought about when you were in 20s?
That's the only thing I had in mind, nothing else.
So life is much bigger than just thinking about women. That's what you want to say to us?
Yeah, just a little.
That's great. So my last question for you here, Charles. If you have to, this one you just told us about the woman, what is another piece of advice that you'd give to people who are listening right now?
Well, if you are a younger person, the most important thing to realize is that you, regardless of who you are full of talents, and a great deal of your talents may be hidden, and it is your job to find out what type of talents that you have. So I would encourage everybody, regardless of age, to learn something new. Continuously learn something new. Find out where your talents are. Develop your talents, because we need all the brain power and all the talents of everybody on this earth to solve the enormous problems that we are faced with.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome message. Charles, thank you so much for being here with us today. I appreciate it. And you're an inspiration for everybody here who are listening, and for me as well. I hope one day to get what you are, and with the same health and the same drive that you have in your life right now.
Well, you're
And
very kind. Thank you very much. I wish you
thank
the best of luck, and I sincerely hope that you will live to 100.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Brazilian Health Nut Show. Go to www.brazilianhealthnut.com for much more information about how to burn fat for the rest of your life. Hasta luego.